Elias Vance was a man sculpted by silence, not the peaceful kind, but the heavy, suffocating silence of a mountain town in winter, where the snow absorbs all sound and the cold seeps into your bones. For 30 years he had been the town's clockmaker, a hermit in a world of intricate gears and tiny, precise springs. His world was small, predictable, and ordered. He liked it that way. The shop, Vance and Son Timepieces, was a misnomer that had become a painful joke. There was no sun. There never had been. The sign was a relic from his father's time, a ghost of a dream Elias had failed to bring to life. His only companion was the rhythmic, comforting tick-tock of 100 clocks, a symphony of moments passing him by. But the world outside his frosted window was changing. The internet had arrived in Potter's Ridge, and with it, a creeping obsolescence. Who needed a hand-wound pocket watch when you had a smartphone? Who cared about the intricate dance of an escapement when you could check the time with a glance at your wrist? Elias's business was dying. The few customers who came in were elderly, looking for a battery replacement, not the delicate art of restoration. His savings were a thin, worried whisper in a worn-out bank book. The silence in his shop was no longer peaceful, it was the sound of his life's work fading into nothing. One biting December evening, as he was closing up, a young woman bundled in a brightly colored coat burst through the door, bringing a swirl of snow and energy with her. "Mr. Vance?" she asked, her cheeks flushed with cold. He grunted in acknowledgement, not looking up from the mainspring he was carefully cleaning. "My name is Chloe," she said, undeterred. "I'm I guess you'd call me a digital storyteller. I make videos for a living." Elias looked up, his brow furrowed. "I don't have a television." Chloe laughed, a bright, clear sound that seemed out of place among the dusty clocks. "Not for TV, for the internet, for a site called Wide World. I saw your shop. It's amazing. It's like stepping back in time." Elias saw only dust and failure. "It's a relic, like me." "That's exactly the point," Chloe exclaimed, her eyes sparkling. "There are millions of people out there hungry for something real, for craftsmanship, for a story. I want to tell your story." For the next hour, she talked. She spoke of algorithms and audiences, of communities built around shared passions. She spoke of a world where a master clockmaker in a forgotten town could be seen and appreciated by people on the other side of the planet. It sounded like a fairy tale to Elias, a language as foreign as the inner workings of a quartz watch. "It's foolishness," he muttered, turning back to his work. "I fix clocks. I don't perform." But Chloe was persistent. She came back the next day and the next. She didn't bring a camera. She just watched. She asked questions about the clocks, not about the time they told, but about their history, their souls. She asked about the 18th century Longues clock from England, its case scarred from an ocean voyage. She asked about the tiny, silver locket watch that had stopped at the exact moment its owner, a World War I soldier, had fallen. For the first time in years, Elias talked. He didn't just explain the mechanics, he shared the stories woven into the brass and steel. He spoke of the long-dead craftsmen who had filed each gear by hand, who had poured their lives into these beautiful, functional machines. He spoke with a reverence that was almost religious. Finally, Chloe made her proposition. "Let me film you, not fixing a clock, but telling a story, the story of that watch." She pointed to the soldier's locket. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced Elias's chest. The fear of exposure, of judgment, of the world seeing him as the failure he felt he was. But beneath that fear, a tiny spring of something else, hope, perhaps, began to unwind. The thought of that soldier's story being lost forever was a greater tragedy than his own embarrassment. He gave a slow, hesitant nod. Chloe returned the next morning with a small, professional camera and soft lights that warmed the dusty shop. She positioned Elias at his workbench, the locket watch cradled in his gnarled, gentle hands. "Just talk to me, Mr. Vance," she said softly. "Tell me about him. Tell me about the watch." The red light on the camera blinked on. Elias felt a wave of panic. His throat tightened. The familiar tick-tock of his clocks seemed to grow deafening, a million voices urging him to stop. Then he looked down at the watch. He saw the faint, almost invisible dent on its side, the bullet, Chloe had theorized. He saw the delicate, faded engraving on the inside of the case, asterisk to James, with all my love, E. 1917. And he began to talk. He spoke of the meticulous craftsmanship, the way the blued steel hands still pointed to the hours with quiet dignity. He spoke of the sentimental engraving, imagining the young woman, E, who had given it, and the young man, James, who had carried it into the hell of the trenches. He spoke of the probability, the heartbreaking likelihood that James had looked at this very watch, a gift from his love, in his final moment. His voice was low and rough, but it was filled with a profound, aching humanity. He wasn't just fixing a watch, he was resurrecting a soul. He talked for an hour, losing himself in the story, forgetting the blinking light, the young woman, the world outside. When he finished, there was a long silence. Chloe had tears streaming down her cheeks. She didn't say a word. She simply packed up her gear and left with a whispered, "Thank you." A few weeks later, she returned. She showed him the video on her laptop. Elias watched himself, an old man in a dusty shop, holding a watch. He saw his own hands, his own face, and heard his own voice telling a story of love and loss and the enduring power of memory. It was the most vulnerable he had ever felt and also the most real. "I'm posting it tonight," Chloe said. Elias braced himself for nothing, for the vast, empty silence of the internet. But the silence didn't come. The next morning, his ancient computer, which he only used for email, began to ping, and ping, and ping. It was a sound he'd never heard before, a digital cacophony. Chloe called him, screaming with joy. The video had gone, as she put it, viral. Comments flooded in from around the globe. From London, a woman wrote that her grandfather had fought in the Great War and the video made her feel closer to him. From Tokyo, a young man said he'd never considered the soul in an object until he heard Elias speak. From a small town in Ohio, a teenager wrote that it made him want to learn a trade, to make something with his hands. The video wasn't about clockmaking. It was about humanity. It was about the stories we carry, the memories we hold, and the quiet dignity of a life dedicated to preserving them. The door to his shop no longer creaked open for the occasional customer. It was pushed ajar by a steady stream of visitors. People came from neighboring states, clutching broken heirlooms, a grandmother's mantel clock, a father's old wristwatch, a pocket watch that had been in the family for generations. They didn't just want them fixed. They wanted Elias to hear their stories. He worked longer hours than he had in 20 years. His hands, once idle, were now constantly moving. The shop was no longer silent. It hummed with conversation, with laughter, with a shared experience of remembrance. The symphony of ticking clocks was now accompanied by the music of human connection. One afternoon, a young man named David walked in, holding a shattered alarm clock. It was cheap, plastic, nothing like the antique treasures Elias usually handled. But David's eyes were red-rimmed. "It was my dad's," he said, his voice thick. "He used it to wake up for the early shift at the factory. He passed away last month. I know it's not worth anything, but it's all I have." Elias took the clock. He saw past the broken plastic and the cheap quartz movement. He saw the story. He saw a father getting up before dawn to provide for his family, guided by the simple, persistent alarm. He saw a son, clinging to the last tangible piece of his father's daily life. "There are no worthless timepieces, David," Elias said gently. "Only untold stories." He didn't fix it with a new, generic movement. He painstakingly sourced the exact same cheap mechanism, carefully transferring the original, slightly crooked bell because that was the one his father had heard every morning. When David returned, he held the clock, now ticking once more, and his face crumpled with gratitude. "Thank you, Mr. Vance," he whispered. "Thank you for giving me back my mornings with him." In that moment, Elias understood. He was the failed clockmaker without a son. He was a keeper of time, a guardian of memories. The world had found him, not despite his isolation, but because of the profound, quiet truth he had cultivated within it. His story, the story of a man who felt invisible, had resonated with millions who also felt unseen, reminding them that every life, every object, every moment has a story worth telling. The shop's sign, "Vance and Son Timepieces," no longer felt like a lie. He realized he had 1,000 sons and daughters now, the people who watched his videos, who visited his shop, who entrusted him with their memories. He was a father to their stories. One evening, Chloe came to visit. The shop was closed, but the lights were on, casting a warm, welcoming glow onto the snowy street. "I have another idea," she said, a familiar mischievous glint in her eye. "For the channel." Elias smiled, a genuine, easy smile that had become a regular feature on his face. "Another story to tell." "Not just one," she said. "A series. The Keepers of Time. We travel to other craftspeople, other guardians of forgotten arts. A bookbinder in Boston, a stained glass artist in Chicago, a luthier in Nashville. You can be the host. You can help them tell their stories the way you helped me tell James's." The old Elias would have balked. The old Elias would have been paralyzed by fear. But that man was a ghost of the past, a clock that had stopped long ago. This new Elias, wounded by the key of human connection, was ticking with a new, powerful purpose. He thought of the luthier, shaping wood into music. He thought of the bookbinder, stitching pages into vessels of knowledge. He thought of all the quiet masters of the world working in obscurity, their stories waiting to be told. "When do we start?" he asked. The journey of Elias Vance was a testament to a simple truth: your moment is never behind you. It is always now. The gears of our lives can feel stuck, rusted by fear and failure. But often, all it takes is one person to see the potential in our silence, one person to shine a light on the intricate beauty of our own unique design, to set the whole mechanism in motion again. Elias didn't find success by chasing it. He found it by opening his door, by sharing his truth, by listening to the stories of others. He proved that it's never too late to become the person you were always meant to be. The masterpiece of your life is not a final product, but an ongoing process, a continuous, careful, and loving restoration. And so, the former hermit of Potter's Ridge, the man who thought his life was over, began his greatest adventure yet, one tick, one story, one restored soul at a time. Because the most important time isn't the one told by a clock, but the one we choose to share with each other. If the story of Elias Vance touched even one gear in your heart, if it reminded you that your own story is still being written, then please don't let this moment pass unnoticed. By liking this video, you tell the algorithm that stories of hope and second chances matter. And by subscribing to this channel, you become part of a community that believes in the power of the human spirit. Join us as we continue to travel and find the keepers of time in all of us. Hit that like button, click subscribe, and let's keep telling these stories together. Your next chapter starts now.